ready to jump into something that might just flip your whole perspective. We're going to crack open Shattering Logocentrism this time. It's by Conrad Riker. Derrida, Hauntology, and the Ghosts of Thought. I know. The title's a mouthful, but stick with me. This book, it gets at some seriously relevant stuff, especially if you're trying to make sense of the world, relationships, the whole power dynamic thing we see everywhere these days.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. The book really digs into this idea. It's called logocentrism, basically the belief that there's just one big overarching truth out there. Think about it like those arguments you might have about who's right, who's wrong, or even just that feeling like there's only one right way to do things to live your life. That's logocentrism right there.
Okay, so we're stuck in this box thinking there's just one right answer. And that can really screw things up, right? Especially in relationships. I mean, that's where compromise and actually understanding each other matters most.
Exactly. And Riker, he doesn't stop there. He links this logocentrism way back to some heavy hitters in philosophy like Plato and Aristotle. Turns out they were grappling with this stuff ages ago.
Wow, so this isn't some new age mumbo jumbo. It's got serious historical roots.
Yeah.
But okay, how does this all tie back to, the red pill world? Guys who are, let's say, trying to understand those covert contracts in their marriages. How does this fit in?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Shattering Logocentrism introduces this wild concept called hauntology. Now hold on, before you think we've gone full ghost hunter. Hauntology isn't about literal ghosts. It's more about the way the past sticks around. It keeps influencing the present even if we're totally oblivious.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. But hauntology,
yeah.
How does that play out in real life?
Yeah.
Especially in the context of, say, marriage.
All right, imagine this. You and your wife, you come from different families, different backgrounds, got totally different experiences, right? You've both been shaped by, societal expectations, gender roles, all that stuff passed down for generations. Well, all that baggage, all that history, it's like a ghost in the room. It's there in your relationship, even if you don't see it.
Oh, so you're saying, even if we don't realize it, we're dragging the past into our relationship.
Yeah.
And that can create what? All these unspoken expectations, conflicts, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. And guess what? Those unspoken expectations, that's essentially the core of what we're talking about with covert contracts.
Okay, I think the light bulb just clicked on for me. So hauntology, it's like the hidden force behind these covert contracts, the puppet master, pulling the strings of our behavior and expectations in our relationship.
You got it. And by understanding hauntology, we can start to see how those covert contracts are formed, where they come from, and how they might be messing with our relationships in ways we've never even considered.
This is pretty mind-blowing. Okay, so we've got this logocentrism thing, the single truth idea, and now hauntology, the past hanging around. But how does it all tie back to the book's title, Shattering Logocentrism?
Good question. That's where Jacques Derrida enters the scene. He's the philosopher who really took a sledgehammer to this whole logocentrism thing. Derrida, his argument was that, meaning it's never fixed. It's always shifting, changing, depending on the context. He came up with this method, he called it deconstruction, to kind of unpack all those hidden meanings and assumptions.
Construction. Sounds intense. Break that down a little, maybe.
Sure. Imagine you're having that classic argument with your wife about housework. You say something like, honey, I need you to do the dishes. Seems simple enough, right?
Yeah, pretty basic, everyday kind of request.
But hold on. Think about all the assumptions crammed into that one sentence. What does need really mean there? Is it an actual need, or is it an expectation based on, who knows, maybe those traditional gender roles? And who gets to decide what a clean dish is? What are the power dynamics lurking under the surface?
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like that simple sentence is a Trojan horse for all this unspoken baggage and assumption.
You got it. That's precisely what deconstruction helps us do. It lets us unpack those hidden meanings, question the assumptions we've been taking for granted, and see things from, multiple perspectives.
Okay, it's starting to click now.
Yeah.
So instead of just accepting things at face value, deconstruction encourages us to dig a little deeper, question the narrative we've been fed, and challenge those deeply ingrained beliefs that might be causing friction in our relationship.
You nailed it. And this is right where Derrida's work intersects with that whole red pill way of thinking. It's all about questioning those dominant narratives, recognizing how we've been programmed by society, and ultimately taking control of our own lives.
Sounds like a serious red pill awakening. So Derrida, he was all about shaking things up, challenging the norm. But where did his ideas come from? Riker mentions this thing called the Frankfurt School as an influence.
Right. The Frankfurt School, they were a group of thinkers who were really critical of how reason and logic could be used for control, not actually for liberation. They were worried about how societal structures, institutions, even ideas themselves could be used to reinforce power imbalances.
Okay, so they were like the OG red pill philosophers, right? Questioning the system, exposing the hidden power plays. But how did their ideas connect with Derrida's work on logocentrism and deconstruction.
Ah, well, that's where it gets a bit tricky. Both Derrida and the Frankfurt School, they were critical of logocentrism. They both saw how the whole search for one single truth could be a problem.
But there was some, disagreement between them, right? Riker mentioned some tension.
Exactly. See, the Frankfurt School, even while they were critiquing logocentrism, they still thought there was a more objective truth out there, a way to sift through the BS and find what's really right. Derrida, though, he focused more on the fact that meaning itself is unstable. His argument. There's no one truth, just a constant back and forth between interpretations.
So it's like they were both trying to, escape the matrix,
Yeah.
but they had different ideas about what was on the other side.
That's a great way to put it. And this tension between them, it matters because it shows that even when you're challenging the system, there can be different ideas about what the solution should be. Something I think that red pill thinkers wrestle with a lot, right?
Totally. Okay, so we've got logocentrism, hauntology, deconstruction, and this whole Derrida versus Frankfurt School debate. It's a lot to take in, but I'm starting to see how these ideas can help us understand the world in a totally different way. Especially, when it comes to relationships and those big societal forces that shape our lives.
For sure. And believe me, we're just scratching the surface. Riker, he goes on to explore how hauntology pops up everywhere, from literature and media to art and even psychology. It's a framework, that can help us understand how the past, it keeps shaping the present, often without us even knowing it.
I'm ready to keep digging. Let's dive deeper into some of those real-world examples in the next part of our discussion.
So we were talking about hauntology, right? How it shows up in everyday life. We touched on how past experiences, those societal expectations, they can really mess with relationships, but it goes even deeper than that.
Okay, you've got me hooked. What are some other examples, like hauntology in action?
Well, think about something as simple as nostalgia, right? That feeling you get, that longing for the good old days, whether it's your childhood or, some period in history you romanticize. That's hauntology doing its thing. The past, it's tugging at you, shaping your emotions, your desires right now.
That's wild. It's like those memories, those feelings from back then, they're like ghosts that keep coming back to, pay us a visit.
You got it. And those ghosts, they're not always harmless, Think about how past trauma, stuff that happened to you, or even big societal traumas, they can keep haunting us. It shapes our relationships, how we see ourselves, even the choices we make in life.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought. So hauntology, it's not all sunshine and roses, right? It's
Yep.
about facing those shadows from the past,
Yeah.
the stuff we might try to bury or just ignore.
You're exactly right. And I think for men especially, who are often told to, man up, suppress their emotions, facing those ghosts can be a huge step towards healing and actually growing as a person.
That makes sense. If we're lugging around all this baggage from the past,
Yeah.
it's going to affect how we show up in our relationships, how we interact with the world, everything. But how does hauntology help us, challenge those negative patterns, those ghosts that might be holding us back?
The first step is recognizing them, right? Once you see those ghostly influences, those beliefs or behaviors that are coming from the past, you can start to question them. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Is it really doing me any good? Does it fit with the kind of man I want to be?
So it's about becoming aware of those patterns, those ghosts running on autopilot, and then consciously choosing to keep them or, kick them to the curb.
Exact. That's where the real power lies. Hauntology, it's not about being a victim of the past, right? It's about understanding how it shapes us and then using that knowledge to create a better future, to actually take control.
Now, that's a message that really aligns with the whole red pill philosophy,
Yeah.
taking responsibility, creating the life you want. You mentioned earlier that hauntology can also help us understand the power dynamics in society. How does that work?
Remember how we talked about logocentrism? That single dominant narrative. Hauntology helps us see how those narratives are often shaped by the ghosts of, past power structure.
Okay, I'm following you. Can you give me an example, something concrete?
Sure. Let's take the idea of the traditional family, the nuclear family, the breadwinner husband, stay-at-home wife. This model, it's often presented as the natural order of things, but it's actually a pretty recent invention. It's heavily influenced by the economic and social forces of, the mid-20th century.
So you're saying that our ideas about what a normal family is supposed to look like, they're actually haunted by these ghosts of past societal expectations.
Exactly. And those expectations, those ideas about gender roles, family structures, they were often shaped by, the people in power, the ones who benefited from a system that kept women in the home and men as the sole provider.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we've inherited this blueprint for how things should be without ever questioning where it came from or who it actually benefits.
Exactly. And this is where hauntology can be really eye-opening, especially for men who are trying to figure out this whole modern relationship thing. It lets you question those assumptions, see the power dynamics at play, and create relationships that are more, equitable and fulfilling.
That's a powerful insight. So by understanding hauntology, we can see how the past keeps influencing the present, not just in our personal lives, but in, like, the big picture of society, too.
Absolutely. And for men who are, let's say, concerned about the influence of feminism and Marxism, hauntology can be a valuable tool. It helps you understand how these ideologies have gained power, how they might be operating in ways that are, well, maybe not so beneficial for men.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how this all connects. But if we're talking about challenging these power structures, how do we actually use hauntology to do that? It seems kind of, I don't know, abstract.
Well, one of the most important things is raising awareness, right? By understanding how hauntology works, how the past keeps shaping the present, we can start to see those hidden forces that are influencing our lives, shaping our society. It's like, taking the red pill, waking up to the fact that things aren't always what they seem.
So like seeing the matrix, understanding the system, and then figuring out how to break free.
Exactly. Once you're aware of those ghostly influences, you can start to challenge them. Question the dominant narratives, support alternative perspectives, and work to create a system that's more just, more equitable.
Makes sense. But let's bring it back to the personal level for a second. How can men use hauntology to navigate relationships today? Especially when it comes to those covert contracts we talked about.
Right. Remember those covert contracts? Those are basically the unspoken agreements we make in relationships, often based on, societal expectations and gender roles. Hauntology helps us see how those contracts are shaped by the ghosts of the past.
Right, we talked about how those expectations are often passed down from, like, previous generations, from societal norms.
Exactly. And that's where things can get messy. If we're not aware of those ghostly influences, those unspoken expectations, we can wind up in relationships that are, well, unbalanced, unfulfilling.
So it's like we're living out a script that was written before we were even born.
Great analogy. And hauntology gives us the tools to rewrite that script. By understanding how those covert contracts are formed, we can start to, renegotiate them, have those open and honest conversations with our partners about what we need, what we expect, and create relationships based on mutual respect, understanding.
Sounds, well, ideal. But it also sounds like a lot of work. How do we actually go about renegotiating those covert contracts?
Awareness is the first step. Pay attention to those moments when you're feeling resentful, frustrated, like something's not quite right. That's often a sign that a covert contract's at play.
So being present, paying attention to those subtle cues that something's off.
Exactly. And once you've spotted the covert contract, the next step is communication. Sit down with your partner, have an honest conversation about your expectations. Talk about where those expectations came from, whether they're actually working for both of you, and how you can create a more balanced dynamic.
Sounds like a recipe for a major relationship breakthrough.
Can be. And it's all about being willing to, challenge the status quo, to question those unspoken agreements that might be causing friction.
Okay, I see how hauntology can be a real game changer for men in relationships. It's about taking control, rewriting the script, and creating a relationship that actually works for both partners.
You got it. And remember, this isn't about blaming your partner or trying to control them. It's about understanding how the past influences the present and working together to build a better future.
That's a powerful message. But before we move on, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about hauntology being relevant for men's rights activists. Could you unpack that a bit more?
Of course. One of the big concerns for men's rights activists is the idea that feminism has, taken over our institutions, and it's now working in ways that are harmful to men.
Right, there's this feeling that the playing field's been tilted and men are getting the short end of the stick.
Exactly. And hauntology, it can provide a deeper understanding of how this happened. It helps us see how historical power structures, societal expectations, even stuff from centuries ago, it's still influencing us today.
So it's not just about understanding how things are now. It's about tracing those power dynamics back to their roots, seeing how they've evolved over time.
Precisely. And by grasping the historical context, we can better understand the challenges that men face today. For example, men's rights activists often talk about the bias against men in family courts, the pressure on men to be providers, and the expectation that men shouldn't show their emotion.
Yeah, these are issues that resonate with a lot of guys, especially in the red pill community. How does hauntology help address these issues?
Well, first off, it helps us see that these problems aren't just, individual failings or personal choices. They're often the result of deeply ingrained social norms, expectations that have been passed down for generations.
So it's not about blaming individual men or saying they're not trying hard enough. It's about recognizing that there are these larger forces at play, historical and societal ghosts that are shaping the game.
You got it. And once we get that, we can start to challenge those norms and expectations. We can push for policies that are more equitable for men, support organizations working to change the narrative around masculinity, and work towards a society that's more just for everyone.
Oh, that's a vision.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like a massive undertaking. Where do we even start tackling these deeply ingrained social norms?
It starts with awareness, like we've been talking about. The more people understand how hauntology works, how the past influences the present, the more likely we are to challenge those outdated norms and create a better future.
So it's about education, spreading the word,
Yeah.
getting people to see the world through this hauntology lens.
Exactly. And that's why books like Shattering Logocentrism, they're so important. They give us the framework to understand these complex issues and offer a way forward.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Hauntology in everyday life, power dynamics, covert contracts, and how it can be a tool for both personal and social change. But Riker also gives some really fascinating examples of hauntology in action, pulling from literature, movies, art.
Absolutely. And those examples can really bring these concepts to life, help us see the power of hauntology in action.
Let's dive into those examples in the next part of our discussion. I'm excited to see how hauntology plays out in the real world.
Okay, so we've really been digging into this whole hauntology thing, how the past, it just keeps shaping our present, even when we don't see it. But I'm ready for some, real world examples. Riker, he talks about hauntology showing up in books, movies, even art. Let's get specific here.
Right. It's one thing to grasp the concept. It's another to actually see it playing out. Riker, he uses Henry James's The Turn of the Screw to illustrate how hauntology works in, like, a narrative.
Oh yeah, that classic ghost story. I remember reading that. It's so creepy. You never really know if the ghosts are actually there or if it's all in the governess's head. Exactly. That ambiguity, that's key to hauntology. The ghosts, they're never fully present, but their absence, it creates this like unsettling feeling. They're haunting the story, the characters, even the reader.
So it's not about literal ghosts, right? It's about how the past, those events, traumas, they linger and color how we see things, how we react.
Precisely. And think about how that connects to like those covert contracts in relationships. Just like those unseen ghosts are shaping the characters' actions in the book, those covert contracts, those unspoken expectations, they can really mess with how we interact with our partner.
Okay, I see that. But what about movies? How does hauntology work in, I don't know, say a thriller or a drama?
Well, Riker points to The Sixth Sense as a prime example. Remember that one?
Of course, that twist ending still gives me chills.
Yeah, that twist. Bruce Willis's character, he's a ghost the whole time. It plays with our perception of reality. We're basically being haunted right alongside the characters. It's not until the very end that the truth is revealed.
It's like the movie itself becomes this haunted house, and we're trapped inside experiencing it all.
Exactly. And that feeling, that moment when you realize things weren't what they seemed, it connects back to that red pill idea of waking up to a reality that's been hidden from you.
I see that. We think we're watching one thing, but there's this whole other layer, this ghostly presence influencing everything. Makes you wonder what else you might be missing in real life, too.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears to contemporary art. Riker uses Banksy as a perfect example of hauntology in action.
Banksy. Love his work. So subversive, thought-provoking.
Think about his style, right? Street art, often in unexpected places, and then poof, gone the next day. That temporary nature, it makes it even more powerful.
Yeah, because you know it's there one day, gone the next. But it leaves this impression, like a ghost of an idea.
Exactly. And those ideas, the social commentary in his work, they stick with you. Even when the art itself is gone, the message is still there, haunting you.
That's so true. It's like he's exposing those hidden realities, the injustices that we often try to sweep under the rug. And even when the art's gone, we can't unsee those truths.
And that ties right back into that red pill philosophy, right? Challenging the status quo, making people think critically, showing them what's hidden in plain sight.
Man, this has been a wild ride. We've gone from these heavy philosophical concepts to seeing them play out in stories, movies, art. It really changes how you look at things.
That's the whole point. Shattering logocentrism, it's about giving you the tools to question those narratives you've always accepted, those systems that seem, unchangeable.
So it's about recognizing that nothing's truly fixed, that there are always these ghosts from the past influencing our present, and that we actually have the power to challenge them, create something new.
Exactly. That's a message that really hits home, especially for the red pill community. It's about understanding those forces that have shaped our world, our relationships, even our own identity.
It's like we've been given the map to navigate the matrix, to see the code that's been running things all along. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Love that analogy. And remember, this whole journey, this understanding of hauntology, shattering those old narratives, it's an ongoing process. Stay curious, question what you see, and always look for those deeper layers of meaning.
This has been an incredible deep dive into shattering logocentrism and how it connects with the red pill philosophy. I know I'm definitely walking away with a lot to chew on.
Me too. And for anyone who's ready to dig even deeper, I highly recommend checking out Conrad Reicher's book. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Great advice. This is one of those books that can really change how you see the world. And as always, keep questioning everything.